Thank you for joining us for part 2 on the Red Couch with Haley Scott DeMaria. Tell me about the moment when your toes started to move.
Well, that is certainly, as you can imagine, is something I will never forget, and one of those few things that I can still see. Certainly I was lying down, so all I could see were my toes that were propped up. And I had a very quirky habit of painting my toenails red before every swim meet. So there were these bright red toes that I could see at the end of the bed. And my mom was on the phone talking to our athletic director at the time and just telling him that things were the same. And my dad was on the right side of me getting ready to leave because he had to go back to Arizona to be with my sister, and life goes on. So he was leaving, but talking about how he'd be back soon. And I remember just staring at my toes. And one of the other things Dr. Clower had worked with me on is seeing them move, and the whole idea of they're not going to move if you don't think they will. So was constantly staring at them and trying to get them to move, and also processing the fact that they weren't moving and trying to make sense of it all. And all of a sudden, the large toe on my right foot slowly started to move. And I did it several times before I actually said something to anyone, because I didn't know if they were really moving or was I just seeing them move. And I remember taking my dad's arm and not taking my eyes off of my toes and just saying, "Dad, look." And that was really the beginning of just a whole celebration of healing, of hope. My toes moved, and then my ankles and my legs. And in a funny 1992 moment, we actually took out the camera to take still photos of my toes moving, which we laugh at now. But that is one of those moments that I can still see even 20-some years later.
Oh, yeah. Incredible. And during the time that you were in the hospital, your aunt sent you a gift.
Yes, she did. Less than a week after the accident, I received a journal. And it was empty, except for the first page that said, January 24th, 1992, which is the day of our accident, "A new journey begins today." ... And I remember when I first got it, not really knowing what to do with it. I had never written. I'm not someone who journaled. I'm not someone who kept a diary as a young girl. I never saw myself as a writer. I always saw myself more as a math student. So I kept it for a few weeks before I did anything with it, and then started to write, and was probably the most healing tool I had.
And what a wonderful idea for anyone that's in the midst of something so traumatic. And how do you process it? How do you, make sense, or how do you express all the vast range of feelings that you're experiencing?
It's a great tool, and I've given it to many people as gifts is a hard word during a time of sadness, but as a tool or a gesture, a very thoughtful gesture to give someone a journal. And it is a very safe way to share what you're feeling.
Right.
One of the ways in which we process things is to think about it and talk about it over and over and over, because it helps us make sense of something, to hear our thoughts or to hear ourselves share it. So for me, the journal was a very safe place to do that.
Yeah.
I could tell the story the night of the accident 20 times, and I didn't feel like I was burdening someone with it. Or I could get my anger out through writing in the journal and not feel like someone was the recipient of the anger. Or I could share things that were very private to me that I was struggling with, and I didn't have to be embarrassed about it, or I didn't have to feel like someone was looking at me thinking, how do I get away from her? She's telling me this story again for the 16th time. The journal was a really safe place for me to share all of this and to just write and to tell the same story 100 times and to get my emotions out and to share those very raw personal feelings that we all have and that are all very normal, but are also hard to share one-on-one with someone.
That's such a wonderful idea.
It is. It was a great gift.
I am very interested in what it was like for you to step back on the block, because you came back and you swam again. You not only walked, but you swam, you raced, and not that it mattered, but you did win.
I did. It was a really big deal for me to compete again, and not so much for me, but for everyone who had carried me along this journey. And that really reflected in the celebration of the day. I mean, the stands were packed, And we always joke it's the most people that have ever come to a Notre Dame swim meet. But that really had nothing to do with me and everything to do with the support that embraced our team. And, from the state trooper who was first on the scene of our accident, he came to watch me swim.
Oh, wow.
My OR doctor, my therapist, so many people from the South Bend and Notre Dame communities came to see this race because it was such a sign of healing and being healed. And for me, it was just a celebration of doing what I had always set out to do and a way to honor my two teammates. It was exciting for me in that sense because I had really wanted to walk in memory of them and I had really wanted to swim again for them. And I was able to do that.
Yeah.
But once I got on the pool deck, I think as any athlete, just sort of goes into swimming mode or race mode. And it was in many ways when I stepped on the blocks, just like any other race.
It's so incredible that you came back and swam for the Fighting Irish. What does Notre Dame mean to you?
That's a pretty powerful question, actually. There are times when I look at my life and I've never asked, why did this happen? I've asked why have I healed as well as I do, and I do think about that. But when I really look at who I am as a person, as a wife, as a mother, as someone who tries to really be giving of myself, it all stems back to my time at Notre Dame. And it is pretty safe to say that everything that is meaningful in my life started because of what I experienced at Notre Dame. And so when I look at the blessings in my life and look how healthy I am and look how healthy my children are and how strong our family is, that all stemmed from a very sad event and a very dark time in my life. And I truly believe that being at Notre Dame is what allowed me to get through that and what allowed me to heal the way I did and to go down a path that was very healing. Because there are many different paths you can go down when you experience tragedy at any age, but certainly at a young age. And in that sense, it is very overwhelming for me to think about really with gratitude everything Notre Dame has given me, because it set me down a path to having a very meaningful life. And I'm so grateful for that. And I can't, I could spend the rest of my life showing my appreciation for that because it is really everything that is meaningful to me.
It sounds like such a special place, such a supportive community. They have so much spirit. They have so much feeling of belonging.
Yes, yes. Well, we think so. Not everyone feels that way about the university, but it is a unique place, and it is a very meaningful place for me and for my family, and I think for most people who experience their time there, as a student or a student athlete or a professor or a family member, certainly for my parents, they feel that connection with the university as well. And they took care of us. They really genuinely cared about us and embraced me as a freshman, as a non-Catholic, as a swimmer who may never swim again. It didn't matter. And none of that mattered. All that mattered was that I was a Notre Dame student and I was part of the family, and whatever it took, they would make sure I was okay.
Do you think you parent differently, or your relationship to your husband or your children, do you think you do things differently as a result of having had this accident?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is, well, starting from my husband, it had everything to do with what I looked for in a partner. And I saw that really when we were dating because I was teaching at the time back in Arizona. Yeah. And we had a very sad situation where we lost a student on prom night.
Oh, wow.
She was one of my student council officers, so I knew her very well. She was 18. She was a month from graduation. She was hit by a drunk driver. She had not been drinking. And my husband, husband now, boyfriend at the time, was with me that night. And that event really affected me, more so for her friends, because I understood what they were going through, what it was like to lose a friend at 18 years old and to just go through that process of what is this? What does this mean? And how horrible it is. And so I really empathized and with her friends and got involved in sort of sharing my own experience and helping them through that.
Wow.
And what I found then in my husband was someone who was supportive of me doing that and didn't say to me, Haley, this is too hard on you. Why would you put yourself through this? But really said, I can see this is something you need to do. So what can I do to help you do this? And that was awesome. And what I saw in him was someone who we would be fine no matter what happened to us in life. And I think we all know examples and have seen in our own lives families who either fall apart during a time of tragedy or really bond together. And, you know, either one is very common and very normal. And I knew what path I wanted to go down and was really looking for a partner that would take us down that path, should and when it will happen. So it absolutely affected who I wanted to spend my life with. And then raising my kids, yes, I don't sweat the small stuff. I really let them live their own lives. I truly believe that we learn from hardships. You know, our greatest areas and times of growth are when we struggle a little bit.
Right.
So I'm happy to let them struggle, not needlessly, but I won't do their homework for them. You know, I'm very happy to and try to raise them independently. And I'm sure my mother would say I'm not as sympathetic with my children as she is with them. But I really believe that I healed so well because I was so independent and so strong-willed. And I will absolutely, as hard as those traits are to parent, will nurture those traits in my children.
That is wonderful and good advice for the rest of us.
Well, it's not always easy, but it's what I try to do.
So looking over the course of your life, if you had one secret to living a happy and successful life, what would it be?
Oh, there's a couple things. I believe in miracles. I believe if you are open to seeing them, they will be there, and they happen all the time. But you have to believe in them, and you have to be willing to see them. I also know for me, gratitude and perspective. I had the opportunity to meet Christopher Reeve, who had a very similar injury to mine, but certainly had a different outcome. Right. And in talking with him and sharing our injuries and seeing how remarkably similar they were, except for the location, he broke his back or his spine and his neck, and I'm a little lower. But, you know, he looked at me and he said, you're one of the lucky ones. And that perspective for me of knowing what a different path I could have gone down was a great lesson for me to understand that I am truly blessed. And to have that sense of gratitude every day of knowing how lucky I am and how blessed I am. And, you know, life was really tough at one point, and life is not easy. But if we have that open mind to see the miracles and to have that perspective of truly being grateful for what we do have, it keeps me happy.
That is so wonderful. I'm so grateful to you and grateful to you for writing that beautiful book, What Though the Odds.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us
on the red couch.